is Kenneth the K-Rock Klein. Yes, I am back after a 2 week absence. Folks, I gotta be real honest with you. There's definitely been a lot going on in my life. I apologize for not having a podcast out last week like I had planned, so I know y'all definitely missed out on my NFL predictions for week 5 and also my review for NFL week 4, which I had a pretty good NFL week 4. I went 13 and 3s, and then this past week I actually went 7 and 7, so I was at 500. But you'll hear my predictions for week 6 later on in the show. But anyways, folks, we got that going on. We also got a lot of other things to talk about here. The NFL, big news. Robert Saleh fired from the New York Jets. What do I think of this situation, and whether or not this makes Aaron Rodgers on the same par of LeBron James as far as his ability to kill off coaches' careers? Let's just put it that way, just to find a better term for that matter. Is Aaron Rodgers a coach killer like LeBron James, or is there more to it for that matter? You'll hear my thoughts on that in just a moment. And then, folks, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about who I think the biggest AFC threat to the Kansas City Chiefs is as a moment, but I'm going to be doing it in the form of a play, of a skit for that matter. So this is definitely going to be something we're going to be talking about. And then, folks, I'm going to be getting into a discussion, a bit of a nostalgic discussion, because today is a very special anniversary. Well, nothing in my life, but something that had a big impact in my life. I'm going to be talking about all that in just a moment. But first and foremost, folks, I need to apologize for the last 2 weeks. You know, I had some couple of tough moments. First off, my team, the Astros, got eliminated in the playoffs in the wild card format, which it's hard, it's sad, especially when you expected a big, deep playoff run. But the more you think about it, it just didn't seem like it was likely going to happen that we were going to make it to the ALCS, let alone the World Series this year, because we didn't really enter the postseason red hot. Like, we kind of struggled all throughout the season. We still won the division, which is a remarkable achievement after the slow start we had, but we just weren't as fully healthy, and we had some cases where we missed players, and yet we still found ways to win. So I think this was a bit of a bump in the road, and maybe, you know, the window might be coming to a close sooner than possible. I hope that's not the case. I do hope that we get another chance to compete for future postseasons in the playoffs and get another championship as well. So just to keep reminding of who the boss is in the American League. Maybe this is just a one-off thing. I don't know, but I hope we do win another one in my lifetime in the future in the championship. And then, so I had that going on, and I had a bit of concern as far as a health issue. Fortunately, I am okay, but this is something that I will have to be dealing with for some time. I won't discuss it. It's nothing too serious or life-threatening, but I do need to be very careful and be very mindful of it. I have been known to be concerned about my health because you just don't know what to expect. And that's the thing with doctors these days. Like, I just wish there was a way we can understand what the problem is and not have to wait 2-3 weeks or a month or so to figure out what's going on. Why are we not, why are we not well? Because I feel like that there's got to be a way for doctors to speed things up. And I know they got other patients to deal with. And I'm not trying to take them away, but I feel like there's got to be a way where we can all understand what's happening in our bodies as far as health concerns. So, needless to say, I am okay as far as a health related issue that I got. I won't disclose it for that matter. I just don't feel it's the right time and the right place for it at the moment. So. But I am okay, and I'm expecting to live a pretty long time, hopefully, for a pretty long time. So, fortunately, I am all right as well. So, you had that, and then work's been kind of getting a little to me. It's been getting stressful, and I know it's going to get stressful this week because we have homecoming around here. So, it's definitely that time where things are starting to pick up. And I don't know if I'll be able to get as many podcasts out as I started off at the beginning, but I'm going to try to do. Maybe if I don't get a podcast out one week, I'll try to get it out the next week or so. I might not do 2 podcasts, which I sometimes do, but whatever happens, happens. I'm going to continue to get this podcast out there, so don't worry. If you don't hear from me one week, I'll try to be back on next week. So I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. It's just life's just kind of coming at me full circle. So we got a lot of stuff to talk into. First and foremost, we're going to step aside for that moment, and when we come back, I'm going to be talking about Robert Saleh and the New York Jets, and of course Aaron Rodgers. Do I think he's the LeBron James when it comes to coaching? We'll stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a bit. So when the season began, the NFL season that is, there was a lot of expectations for teams that were capable of representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Obviously, you have the Chiefs, you have the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, maybe the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow coming back. Some said the Houston Texans, and others might say, well, it could be maybe a sleeper team. Well, one team that was getting a lot of expectations was, of course, the New York Jets, and for good reasons. Aaron Rodgers was going to come back and be the starting quarterback for the Jets after missing last season due to a torn ACL, which he sustained 4 plays into last season. So Aaron Rodgers was getting the start, and there was a lot of expectation that the Jets were going to get themselves going, get going for that matter. So you figured the Jets were going to be a legitimate threat, but after 5 weeks, they're sitting at 2-3. Which, when you look at the AFC East standings, they're kind of still in the thick of things. Like, you look at the AFC East standings, the Buffalo Bills currently have a lead at 3-2. The Jets are 2-3, along with the Miami Dolphins, who are still without their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, for a while. And then the Patriots, young team, they just recently announced that they were going to start Drake May for this upcoming game against the Texans. The Patriots are sitting at 1-4 after starting the season 1-0, but then losing the last 4 games. So this is a very tight division. I mean, maybe not the most talented division at the moment, but hey, there's still a chance that maybe the Jets can turn things around. Well, suffice to say, Robert Saleh, the head coach of the New York Jets, has been fired after a slow and disappointing start to this season. And this is kind of crazy because Robert Saleh actually was in the building when he got the word that he was going to be fired for the slow start. And according to multiple sources, he was actually escorted out of the building by the team's director of security. I mean, now there's been some reports that clearly, this is so crazy. Like, the thing is, when you're a coach and you have to be knowing that you're in the hot seat, you're not off to a great start, you're trying to win, but you have to know at some point that your time is coming. And even when it does come, it's still kind of a surprise and kind of a shock, because I'm sure Robert Saleh came into the building thinking, all right, got to get my mindset, got to get my team focused, ready to go for this week. We got a tough game. We need to turn things around. It's going to be against the Bills on Monday night, and they've lost the last 2 games. We got to get going, turn things around. We're going to get ready. And then all of a sudden you hear someone say, hey, organization top needs to talk to you. So this is clear that Robert Saleh kind of knew that he was going to get fired. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. But the fact that you were escorted out of the building by security, whether this was true or not, according to multiple sources, it's a terrible look. It's a terrible look for any organization. This is terrible. It is like basically saying, sorry, you're no longer part of the organization. We're going to need you to leave right now. That's like kicking somebody out of a concert that they were not supposed to go into, or kicking out somebody for running onto the field, which they're not belonging. It's trespassing, basically. The coach is trespassing. And unfortunately for Robert Saleh, that was the case. But then again, it's like, well, you shouldn't be surprised, because it's the New York Jets. Like, there are very few dysfunctional organizations in sports right now than the New York Jets. Like, there is definitely a dysfunctional organization in Cleveland, There's definitely some in Brooklyn and this and yada 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 yada. I mean, this is clearly a typical thing to get escorted out of the building. Now, most people are blowing this out of proportion. I mean, Rich Cimini, I just see a tweet from him that said the Salah escorted out by a security story is a little off base. From what I gather, the head of security walked him into his car, which is protocol. It's not like they had to forcibly remove him from the premises of anything of that nature. Like, okay, I totally understand the whole escorting thing, but still, you're asking a security to help escort the guy out the building, basically because chances are the media is going to want to know what's going on. Why was he fired? They're going to want to get answers of questions from Robert Saleh himself, wondering, hey, what's the big deal? Like, why in the world, what happened? And the thing is, Robert Saleh replaced Adam Gase, who was the head coach for the Jets after he got fired in 2020, and the same thing didn't happen to Adam Gase. Adam Gase never got that same treatment. Maybe it was because we were still under COVID-19 restrictions, and there were some places that were more tightly restricted than others, and I think New York was definitely one of the hot spots for COVID-19 and how their response was to it. But it was obvious to everybody, including Saleh, that he was stunned by the decision. He showed up into work thinking he was going to get ready for Buffalo, and instead he is walking out the door. He just got fired. Like, first of all, I'm struggling with this. I'm kind of struggling with this. Now, don't get me wrong. Robert Saleh, not a great coach for the New York Jets, but the Jets are 2-3. They're one game back of the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East Division title. So you have to think that there's still a chance that maybe if the Jets can get a little bit of momentum going here, they can turn their season around, and who knows, they make the playoffs, maybe they win the division. But to fire a guy 5 games into the season, even if the record is 2-3, this is, it's stunning. Now, here are some reasons why the firing was due. Like, I think Robert Saleh was not going to be the Jets coach for long because he lost to the Minnesota Vikings in London, of all places. And that record of Robert Saleh's has ended up being 20-36. The Jets' offense clearly has looked lost at times. And one of the reasons why was Nathaniel Hackett. And we'll get into Nathaniel Hackett in just a moment here. But to tell you the truth, whatever is happening here with the New York Jets, it's clear that they got some serious problems. I mean, the Jets are clearly a dysfunctional team. Now, the more I thought about this, the more I was thinking about the Jets and the situation. I got to think to myself, what led the New York Jets to fire Robert Saleh today instead of waiting for maybe the midway point and the Jets season is going nowhere? What led them to decide now? Did the owner one day just say, I just can't see playoffs at this point. We might have a chance, but I just don't trust Coach Saleh. I got to let him go now. Like, I can't just wait. Did he just say that out of nowhere? Did he panic? Did he say, we got to make a change like immediately? Or was there someone else involved? Good question. I think it's safe to say that I know the answer. At least I think I know the answer, and I think we all have the same answer. The answer as to why Robert Saleh is fired? Aaron Rodgers. That's right. Aaron Rodgers had a say in the matter. You cannot convince me otherwise that Aaron Rodgers had a say in the matter. This comes up because there was a story that came out today that former Jets head coach Robert Saleh, now you can add the former in there, was never going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. There were some stories that it was possible that Saleh was going to fire Nathaniel Hackett because of his offensive play calling, which had been pretty stagnant this time. And supposedly Aaron Rodgers wasn't too happy about it and said, hey, we got to get rid of Saleh. This is not working. This is not the way I see fit. I don't want it. So Therefore, this is not going to be, this is going to happen. We got to fire Saleh because he's going to fire Hackett. Well, according to sources, it was not going to be the case. Robert Saleh, and this is from a tweet from Connor Hughes that I'm reading. Robert Saleh was never going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator. However, he was going to demote his game day responsibilities this week against Buffalo. Saleh made a decision to give play calling to Todd Downing because of the continued issues on offense. He made that final decision Tuesday a.m. Then roughly 5 minutes later, he was called into Woody Johnson's office and fired. Woody! Why? So what we have here is a situation where Robert Saleh, trying to do what's best for his team, decides, look, I'm not going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, but I am going to take away play calling responsibilities from him, and I'm going to give it to Downing, another guy. And the perception now is that when Aaron Rodgers heard this, or when the Jets organization heard this, they said, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. There's no question that, we're going to let this happen. We're going to fire Saleh right now. Like, literally, before he makes the decision, or before he says, hey, I'm going to make this decision and give play calling duties. But clearly, there was something involved. Something had to make the Jets say, we can't do this. Like, we can't let this happen. Saleh, you're gone. And I think I know that it's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had to have known that this was probably going to happen, and he told Woody Johnson his feelings. That combined with the lack of success from the Jets' offense, who, of course, don't seem to think that Nathaniel Hackett is the reason the Jets are struggling offensively and are sitting at 2-3. And I think it's safe to say that Aaron Rodgers has control of that organization. Because now, Nathaniel Hackett is still the offensive coordinator, while Jeff Ulbrich, the new interim head coach for the Jets, is in charge. There's definitely been some rumors that Nathaniel Hackett's job was in jeopardy, but for now, he is still the head coach. And clearly, there seems to be some influence from Aaron Rodgers. And I got to be real honest with you. Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback that I would want on my team. I think he's a talented quarterback, but I just don't think mentally he's just there. Now, Aaron Rodgers has kind of gone off the rails over the last few years, whether you want to call it his beliefs in COVID-19 vaccines and everything, or the fact that he volunteered to run for vice president for Donald Trump in the event that, Trump was running for re-election, or, all that other stuff. Like, there's clearly something going on with Aaron Rodgers to this point, and I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand what happened or why he's gone the way he has. He just seems to be a polarizing figure at this moment. But clearly, you cannot convince me that Aaron Rodgers was not involved in this, because right now Aaron Rodgers has a say in the matter in the organization, and yet it's not working. And it kind of makes you think that Aaron Rodgers, throughout his career, has had a knack for coaching, killing off coaching opportunities for head coaches. If you don't believe me, let's look at it this way. So Aaron Rodgers got drafted by the Packers, and Mike McCarthy was the head coach. Or actually, he wasn't the head coach at the time, Mike McCarthy. McCarthy was with the 49ers when the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers, a decision that was definitely a mistake on San Francisco's part, because Rodgers, of course, would go on to have a great career in Green Bay. But McCarthy is a head coach in the mid-2000s for the Packers. He wins a Super Bowl with Green Bay along with Rodgers in 2010, and they followed that up with a 15-1 season in 2011 with Aaron Rodgers winning the most valuable player. They didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost in the divisional to the Giants, but it was a great season. But yet over the next few seasons, you started to see the Packers underperform. They would always put together great teams. They would always be in playoff contentions. They would be vying for a Super Bowl, but they always come up short of winning, or making it to the Super Bowl. And that seemed to cause a bit of rift between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. And finally, in the middle of the 2018 season, Mike McCarthy is fired. Now, McCarthy has not had himself a great tenure as head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He seems to be making bonehead decisions one after the other, but that's a story for another day. So McCarthy gets fired. They bring in Matt LaFleur, and LaFleur is able to change the offense to go in Aaron Rodgers' way. And Rodgers has a decent time with the Packers, although there was that situation in the 2020 NFC Championship game where, Matt LaFleur decides rather than, go for it on fourth down, which would have potentially tied the game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he chooses to kick the field goal, and that unfortunately sealed Green Bay's fate right then and there. Tampa Bay ended up winning the game and going on to win the Super Bowl. But the things with the Packers just continued to get rough as Aaron Rodgers struggled. And then he decides, not through Matt LaFleur's fault, he decides he wanted a new change. So he ends up going to the New York Jets, gets the Jets fans very fired up. But what's been going on right now? Well, Matt LaFleur's offense seems to be thriving with Jordan Love and the Packers. They got to the NFC divisional round, although, right now the Green Bay Packers are not quite up to form because Love is recovering from a knee injury. And then Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, and he starts the first game with Robert Saleh as head coach and gets lost for the season 4 plays in. Then he plays 5 games with Robert Saleh and is 2-3. And today, Robert Saleh gets fired, which begs the question, why? Well, I think it's safe to say that Aaron Rodgers has become the LeBron James of coaching situations, or trying to figure out who best to coach the team, because Aaron Rodgers wants to say in the matter. Don't believe me? Don't think that he's like LeBron James? Well, let's look at LeBron James's career. And I'm not talking about LeBron James's time with the Cavaliers. Yes, he's had some coaching situations in Cleveland where coaches don't pan out for him, but they've had some great successes. I'm talking about LeBron James' time with the Lakers. From 2018 to 19, he was coached by Luke Walton. There was an incident where after a win against Golden State on Christmas Day, the Lakers were sitting pretty good at 20-14. But then James got hurt that game, and he ended up missing 6.5 weeks. The team, unfortunately, was not able to recover, and they missed the playoffs, going 37-45. And Luke Walton, was not really a great coach. He wasn't a bad coach. He wasn't what the coaches that would follow from LeBron James. But there were just some other factors, particularly with the LeVar Ball family situation, which, again, is a whole story for another day. So Luke Walton goes, and then you bring in Frank Vogel, and Vogel does help the Lakers win the championship, although it was in the bubble down in Orlando. And so they win a championship, but sadly, they are not able to build off of that, and Frank Vogel, unfortunately, gets fired from the Lakers. And then they bring in Darvin Ham. And Darvin Ham, the last few seasons, he just was not able to find some success with the Lakers. It seemed like he was always getting criticized for not utilizing the talent and couldn't find a winning formula, even when you have 2 of the best players on the same team in the same starting lineup with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now, granted, the Lakers did reach the Western Conference Finals in 2023, but they were swept by the Denver Nuggets. And then, last year, they just couldn't get to a higher seed in the playoffs, and they unfortunately, were bounced in the play-in tournament. Then there was a situation where LeBron James didn't like Coach Ham's coaching game plan against the Clippers, so he overruled Darvin Ham. And I think that just shows you that Darvin Ham wasn't able to help the Lakers or get successful, and LeBron James has some say in the matter. Now you have LeBron James, who has probably played a role with getting J.J. Redick to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, despite not having any coaching experience whatsoever, and the fact that he was a former podcaster. So there's a lot to be said. But the way I look at it, Aaron Rodgers is having a say in this matter. And how do I know this, or how do I feel like this? Well, Davante Adams is a potential trade target for the Jets. You trade Davante Adams to the Jets, you're reuniting Rodgers with his best wide receiver in Green Bay, and who knows? Those two guys can form a dynamic duo once again and get the Jets back on track. So there's definitely some room that makes people believe that Aaron Rodgers has a say in the matter. And I would not trust Aaron Rodgers at any point, even if he is playing great football, even if he's got the Jets in prime position, because right now, Aaron Rodgers to the Jets has been nothing but a train wreck. Not necessarily as disastrous as Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns or Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers or any other dysfunctional franchise. Not necessarily on that regard, but the Jets have just been a franchise that has been all hype and no bark, no talk. You talk the big game, but you don't follow that up with a big game. Because for many years, the Jets fans have had to watch the New England Patriots dominate the AFC East, and then they have to watch the Buffalo Bills take control of the AFC East when they had an opportunity to take control. I mean, I don't know what to say about the Jets, because clearly they're not having themselves a great time. 2-3 after 5 games, and you make a decision like this, something is obviously wrong. I mean, that organization is a dumpster fire for all that matters. I don't know. Maybe it's the curse of Joe Namath. Maybe it was when Joe Namath guaranteed victory that he tested the sports gods a bit and was able to back it up. But you cannot tell me that Robert Saleh was fired not by the owner out of nowhere, but Aaron Rodgers played a role. I don't know how big of a role, but it was a role that said, you know what? We need to get him out of here. We need to move on. We need to change. Would the same thing have happened if Rodgers wasn't a quarterback? Like if he wasn't on the Jets? I don't know. I don't think Saleh would have lasted an entire season, but I certainly think he would not have been fired 5 weeks in. So that's a question mark for another day. But we are going to continue on with our NFL topics. Next up, I got a funny skit for y'all. I got something really exciting. We're going to be talking about the AFC's biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs, as far as who can win the AFC if not the Chiefs. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. It's time now for our second segment, and folks, I got a special treat for y'all. Well, I got a couple of special treats for y'all. But for this segment, we're going to be talking about who I think at this point is the AFC's biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because right now, I feel like there's nobody that's really standing out. Now, I could sit here and give my thoughts on each of the teams and say, here's why I think this team is a big threat, and here's why I'm not. They're not big threats to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I could basically waste about 15 or so minutes here, there, and, everywhere doing all of that. And it would be maybe a boring segment. But I'm sitting there thinking, and I figured, you know what? I'm feeling a little nostalgic. I'm feeling a little British today. Like, I feel like I want to turn British, for that matter. I know it sounds crazy because I'm always going to be straight up American, for that matter. But I was doing some thinking. Have you ever watched the TV show Taskmaster? The show where you have this big guy that sits in a chair like a royal throne, basically saying, "Hey, I'm the Taskmaster. This is my, house." He's got an assistant, and he's also got like 5 comedians, 5 famous personalities up in England, or there's other shows around the other countries, but up in England, some famous personalities. If you're living in England, you probably know of these people and all that. These are comedians. These are celebrities and everything. And he asked them to do these ridiculous tasks, and they perform these tasks, and he has to judge them based on what he thinks. He gives out points, and whoever has the maximum of 5 points wins the task, or whoever has 1 point is the one that gets worse. So does it like a ranking system, like he does it in a points value. And by the end of the series, whoever has the most points wins the show. So I'm sitting there thinking, I could do what I want to do initially, but the more I think about it, I think I can make this a bit of a Taskmaster type situation. Yes, but with a couple of changes. Instead of me doing it in the form of the Taskmaster, what if I did it in the form of the Chiefmaster? So, like, I'm pretending that I'm the Kansas City Chiefs. I know the competition. I'm the one that's trying to decide who I think is the best threat to taking over the AFC. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have created a skit that I'm sure you will love, and I have decided to give you guys an example of Taskmaster, or I should say, the Chiefmaster. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, live from a studio. I present to you, the Chiefmaster. Hello, and welcome to Chiefmaster, the show where every week the big question that's always asked is who's finishing second to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am, of course, the Chiefmaster, and it is with great pride that despite some fears and concerns, I am pleased to say Rashee Rice is looking forward to making a return as soon as possible for us to continue our quest to a historic third Super Bowl in a row. Yes, thank you very much for that excitement. I am also pleased to announce that despite a pretty good challenge from the New Orleans Saints, we are now 5-0. And since we are one of two teams left that are undefeated, I want to tip my hat to the Vikings and say enjoy it, because you can best believe reality is coming, and always Minnesota is cursed. Remember Super Bowl IV when the Viking in the hot air balloon had a miserable time getting up? That's what the Vikings did that game when we beat them 23-7. Now with that being said, it's time to meet our special guest. 5 teams that believe they can challenge for my ultimate crown as AFC Superior Leader. Give a warm Kansas City welcome to the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, the Denver Broncos, the Houston Texans, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, what kind of show would this be without the help of an assistant that I cherish more than Travis Kelce cherishes his podcast, his brother, and his new love in his life in Taylor Swift? The person who has helped benefited me in any way, shape, or form. For me, it's the crooked referee! Good evening, Chiefs. Good evening, ref. How are you today? Feeling fine. I've been practicing some new ways to throw a flag. You want to see some? Well, sure. What new ways do you have? Well, okay, here's one where I stand and watch. See, 2 people side by side. Notice that your receiver pushes off a defender. As soon as the defender claps, I take my slingshot and fire it off his hands and hope it hurts, giving him an offensive pass interference. Wait a minute. Don't you mean defensive pass interference? And maybe that's a little bit too violent. Silly me. I might have made a mistake there. Anyway, here's another one. So, if let's say Travis Kelce believes he gets held on a play when he's really not, I not only throw a flag to the defender on the play, but also give him free tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. Now, why would you do that? Well, he's got the girl that loves Taylor Swift. Perfect romantic gift, and I'm a very generous person, even to you. Let's hold the affection down. Now tell me, what exactly are these 5 characters doing here at this point? Well, good Chiefmaster, these 5 losers, teams, are here to bring you gifts, and you are here to judge who has the best gift. which will be granted 5 points, and who has the worst gift, which will be granted 1 point. Tonight, you've asked them to bring you the best case for why they are to be seen as your biggest threat to win the AFC this year. Ooh, spooky. And we're not even in Halloween. Well, let's get started. Good morning, Baltimore. Good evening, Chiefmaster. How's that likely tow truck of yours doing? He's doing... I'm not gonna live it down, or am I? Oh, come on now, Rave. It's all in good fun. But seriously, what makes you think you're my biggest competition? So, even though we lost to you the last 2 times we've played you tougher than anyone lately, even the Bengals, we did start 0-2, but we have since caught fire, and we've recently defeated the Cowboys. You almost blew the lead late. Yes, but we held on very firm. Then we knocked out the team sitting next to me in Buffalo. I don't remember that game. We ruined an MVP candidate's case of winning the MVP, and just last week, we came back to beat the Bengals in a thrilling overtime contest of a game. We currently are in first place of our division, winning the last 3, and looking at our schedule, I feel pretty good that we could finish at least the number 2 seed and be able to beat y'all in the AFC title game again. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. You say you're in first in your division. Yes. Ref, look at the AFC North standings. Well, it's an odd division because you've got the Ravens tied for first with the Steelers at 3-2, while the Bengals and Browns sit down low at 1-4.
Can I just say I am excited to even be in front of Cincinnati? That team has been annoying for the past few seasons. It's time for them to get a slice of humble pie.
Now, when I look at you Ravens, I see a tremendous talent in Lamar Jackson, the 2-time MVP. I think he's been balling out as of lately, but what intrigues me more is that defense of yours. Mind you, you did beat Cincy in a thriller, but it was the defense that put y'all in that mess. Understandably so, and that's an issue we have to fix with. I mean, that defense gave us a hard time when we faced y'all back in January in Baltimore, and yet y'all have allowed over 440 yards to Cincinnati, which is the most that y'all have allowed this season. It can be fixable, and 38 points is a lot to allow. Well, it's better than 42 we gave up to Miami 2 years ago. Look, Lamar Jackson completed 26 of 42 for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. You almost lost the game in overtime. He fumbled the snap. But our defense stopped Cincinnati then, and LJ still found a way to win. Listen, as someone with an elite quarterback, I always like it when Patrick Mahomes has to bail us out, even if it takes a little extra to help us. But I would much prefer if the defense hampers down more to make life easier on us. I worry about that defense. Baltimore is supposed to be a defensive-minded team, and they haven't been doing that lately. Offense scores the points, but defense wins the games. Fix that issue, Ravens. Now, Buffalo, what do you have for me? Not that I mind, since I've already got most from you. Well, my friend, hope you're enjoying that draft pick we gave you, but we got off to a great start. We went 3-0 and we had a bump in the road against the Ravens, but we feel very confident in our chances to win. We even have the league's most valuable player on our team. What stuff are you on, man? I'm referring to this season. Josh Allen's the MVP. Didn't look that way when we faced y'all, but he will be this year. I see. So you're 3-1 right now. Yes. What happened on Sunday? Like I said, we lost to the Ravens. No. I mean, what happened last Sunday? I actually got you playing the Texans last Sunday. What happened then?
Yeah, what happened then?
I don't recall. Well, let me enlighten you. You spent all week trying to make the last game a big deal because of the history with Stephon Diggs. You had Josh Allen say a few weeks ago that it was great to have guys that cared about winning more than about stats. However, he got shellacked on Sunday. 9 completions on 30 attempts? Is that MVP numbers? Also, may I remind you that you made a terrible end-of-game management when instead of burning Houston's timeouts to force overtime, you chose to throw 3 incomplete passes to give Houston the ball back with timeouts to work with, and all it took was a 59-yard field goal to beat y'all. The Strouds are pleased with the results. Look, Sean McDermott is a joke of a coach, but I swear, if we had completed 1 pass, we would have won the game. More importantly, I question your capability of benching Allen after the concussion he took. He really should have sat on the bench. But we had to win the game. We were right there. We overcame a 20-3 deficit. And you still lost. 1 touchdown over the last 2 games against playoff competition isn't going to cut it for me. I know you really want to beat me, Bills, but I'm really starting to lose focus on you because no matter how you look at it, you can't beat us. Well, we've beaten you before in the regular season, not the playoffs. You're like the Yankees to the Astros. What? Can I tell you something else? What? You know who the leading receiver was in the game? Who? Stephon Diggs. What? Ha 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 ha. Good times. Moving on, Denver. I'm surprised to see you here. Welcome. Oh, thank you, Chiefmaster. Well, it is an honor for me to be considered a threat, especially since we're coming off a big win over the Raiders. I think it's a great job we did, and yeah, we're excited. Don't you have anything more to add besides that? Why? We're 3-2. And? That's a winning record considering we're in the same division as y'all, and we don't have Russell Wilson anymore. No offense, Steelers, but at least we have a winning record, and we're excited for it. Tell me about that exchange between Bo Nix and Sean Payton on the sideline. Well, I guess you could call it a rookie learning what it's like not to overrule Coach Payton, but he saw an opening and he took it. Sometimes you gotta do that, of course. But Mahomes never learns to disrespect his coach like that. It's not disrespect. We're just excited to be in a winning mode now. How long do you suppose this will go on? You do have the Chargers next week. A winnable game. I think we'll be in the hunt for a playoff spot. Not the AFC West? Oh, no, thank you. I'm just excited to be here in front of you, Chiefmaster. Very well. Texans, 4-1. Good win over the Bills. What would you say is the reason why you should be considered my biggest threat? Well, first of all, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for giving me the opportunity to play this game, but that's nice and all. Don't get me wrong, it's great to give thanks to God, but what about you and your situation? Chiefmaster, all offseason, people have said that if there's anyone that could potentially beat you, it's us. But even though we're 4-1, we haven't quite reached our full potential yet. I'm glad you're honest because that one loss in Minnesota is really a dink on your resume. Yes, we got killed by Minnesota. But if you think about it, our 4 wins have been close games. Sure, we would like to win by an overwhelming margin, and I think that time has come. Some people would say you don't play your best football in October. You play it at the end. And let me say, you have had close games yourself to start the season and won. We've been a resilient team, and we find ways to win, even if we have over 10 penalties a game. Do you think this luck of yours will continue? Oh no, it's not luck. It's just that some decisions made by some people, i.e. your assistant there, put a damper on any drives we have to score points. Now, we're not at the level we want to be at, but I feel confident we are scratching the surface and can only get better from here. Well, despite your recent struggles, and despite how you won your games, you do prove a point that you will need to win tight ball games to be an NFL team, and even if you go from a sloppy win over 2 worse teams to a hard-fought win over a playoff team, shows what the NFL is all about. So we'll see how this continues on. Finally, Pittsburgh. Good to have you here.
Thank you. I am glad to be back.
Where were you even here before?
Well, I've been in your shoes before, and let's just say that our run was better than yours.
Ah, yes, the days of the dinosaurs, where Nixon's Watergate burst, Star Wars was a sci-fi fantasy, and the Bronx really was burning. Sorry, Steelers, you lost me there. What about this year?
So, we did have a tough defeat against the Cowboys.
Was this on Sunday or Monday?
Well, it was 2 days of it. However, despite this, we're actually on par with the Ravens, in case you've forgotten. Our guys are after another playoff spot to make Mike Tomlin look like the greatest coach ever. We only lost to Dallas because we couldn't capitalize on the opportunities presented to us, but better to have Mike Tomlin than Mike McCarthy.
Interesting. What about your quarterback situation?
Oh, sure, Justin Fields has played well, even with the record, and Wilson is recovering from injury, but I'm positive Fields is the guy to help us get to the playoffs and win.
You better stick with Fields if you want to win, because if I were you, Russell Wilson isn't the guy. He couldn't help us out while he was here.
At least he didn't play for a coach that gave up 70 points a game last season.
Oh, harsh words coming from someone who once had Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator. Why, you little silence! Allow me. I got threatening and taunting for both sides. Please remove yourselves back 10 yards. Well, I must say that this is a very interesting, maybe a little bit petty case for reasons why I think each of these teams are deserving to be the title of my biggest threat in the AFC. And to be quite honest, I really don't know if I can give out points, if I can judge that for that matter at this point, because I just, come on guys, the AFC is supposed to be the best division, and yet I'm seeing a lot of parity here. I can't decide who I think is the best AFC. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say that none of you are my biggest threat. Why? Because I'm still the reigning 2-time Super Bowl champion, and I promise you that I will be in the Super Bowl once again, and I will get to the 3rd Super Bowl and win 3 in a row to be the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL.
Oh, you are just so Moorish.
Fine, you know what? I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to give 1 point to the Pittsburgh Steelers just for that.
What? That's not fair.
Ha 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 ha. I told you, you can't mess it up because Wilson's going to mess it up for you. 2 points will go to the Broncos. What? What did I do? That's not fair. Silence. This is my show. I'm in charge of that. Now, so let's see. I had 1 point for the Steelers and 2 points for the Broncos. I'm going to give 3 points to the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, come on. You gotta be kidding me. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Buffalo, I just don't think you're worth being my biggest threat at the moment. You can maybe change your mind if you play better, but it's just not there. Now, it comes down to who I think is between the Texans and the Ravens. And look, I do think the Texans have some potential. I really do. I've yet to play them, and I can't wait to see them in Arrowhead Stadium this season. But at the same time, I'm just not 100% sure that they're ready at this point. Maybe they will be later in the season, but I'm just not sure. I'm going to have to find out for myself. So for now, I'm going to give the Texans 4 points, and I'm going to give the Ravens 5 points. Thank you very much. You are the man. Yeah, you definitely are. The Strouds will remember this. And that concludes another episode of the Chiefmaster. We'll see who really is my biggest threat next time. Goodbye, everybody. Yeah, definitely not a great attempt at a great skit of Taskmaster, or I should say Chiefmaster. But basically, what you have here is a situation where there's really no telling who the best team outside the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC East is, or the AFC for that matter. So yeah, it's going to be a real tough situation for all teams that are trying to figure out who is the best team in the AFC. So we're definitely going to hang on to that as well. Final thing real quick, I'm going to make my predictions for Week 6 because I want to talk about something to end out my podcast. So, pulling out my NFL predictions for Week number 6, I have The 49ers over the Seattle Seahawks. The Chicago Bears over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tampa Bay is going to win against New Orleans, while the Ravens are going to put a stop to Jaden Daniels' hype train in Washington, I feel. Only temporarily, of course. Arizona, I think the Cardinals might have enough to upset Green Bay, depending on if Jordan Love can get back on track. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Flacco. I think it's going to be a great time for Indy, so I'm going to pick the Colts to beat the Titans. The Houston Texans, it's going to be a tough game. I know the Patriots are starting Drake May for the first time, so that might be a game that the Texans could win, but you just don't really know. Hopefully they don't have a situation where it's a close game against a team that they should beat, so I'm going to give them a slight win just in case. Then we're going to have the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to take down the Cleveland Browns in my prediction. The Chargers are going to get an AFC West win over the Denver Broncos. Then we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's going to be a win for them against the Las Vegas Raiders. Then you have the Atlanta Falcons taking down the Carolina Panthers. The Detroit Lions will beat the Dallas Cowboys. And then we'll have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the New York Giants and the Buffalo Bills taking down the New York Jets, who will be dealing with a lot of distractions from Robert Saleh. So anyways, folks, that is my Week 6 predictions. When we come back, I am going to be talking about a special anniversary to me personally. Stay tuned. It involves a little bit of a choo-choo. Woo, woo. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Was a remarkable year, except I wasn't alive then. It was another 7 years before I came into the world, but it was a remarkable year for a lot of reasons. Ronald Reagan won his second term in a re-election, defeating Walter Mondale by a large margin, to this day the largest margin in the election history. You had the Karate Kid coming out in movie theaters. You also had the Olympic Games that were hosted in Los Angeles. And you even had Larry Bird and Magic Johnson meeting each other for the first time in 1984 in the NBA Finals. They would meet each other twice. There was that famous Apple computer commercial in 1984. Michael Jackson's hair caught fire while filming a Pepsi commercial, which is, that's kind of a shocking thing for that matter. And then had some great TV shows coming out at that time. Night Court, Miami Vice coming out as well. And, there was also Magnum P.I., Cheers, Family Ties. I mean, wow, they were actually around in that time, but they were kind of starting to hit their peak. So, yeah, definitely a great year if you were alive in the 1980s. But for me, 1984 represents two things. Number one, it was the year when my parents got married. And this is the 40th anniversary of their wedding invitation, and I'm truly excited and honored to be enjoying and celebrating with them. However, this is not the reason why I'm doing this podcast. It's because 1984 also brought a TV show that came into my life. Actually, again, 7 years, but it was the start of a TV show for most people that were alive in the 1980s. And for this particular reason, I thought it would only be fair to say that I published this episode on today, the 40th anniversary of my all-time favorite childhood TV show growing up as a kid. So without further ado, allow me to play a little sample from that show. That's right, folks. Thomas and Friends premiered 40 years ago today. This was a TV show based on the books written by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry. And I got to tell you what, I wish I had been alive in 1984 because, man, I would have definitely loved the show. I still love the show even to this day. As a matter of fact, when I first got introduced to Thomas, it was actually my dad, I think, who told me the first story of Thomas and Gordon, if memory serves me correctly. He probably won't remember this just because it was a long time ago, but I want to say the first story he told me was of Thomas and of Gordon, and how this episode, which was later dubbed Thomas and Gordon, the story goes that Thomas is a little blue tank engine who loves playing tricks on all the big engines, including Gordon, who's the biggest and strongest engine of all time. Gordon finally gets fed up with it and decides to teach Thomas a lesson. He basically pulls an express train, Gordon does, and he pulls it so fast before Thomas can finish shunning the coaches to Gordon. And next thing you know, you have Gordon flying down the I want to say flying down a highway, but I forget that we're on a railroad track here. But he's flying down the tracks with the express, and Thomas right behind him. And Gordon is going so fast that Thomas can't even catch his breath. The episode, of course, ends with Gordon saying, "Well, Thomas, you probably know a thing or two about what hard work is." And Thomas got the point and didn't necessarily prank Gordon for the rest of the episode. And yeah, that was the first episode. It wasn't the first story written, to tell you the truth. That story was, of course, 3 engines, one being called Edward, the other, of course, being Gordon, and then you had Henry, who was another engine on the island of Sodor, which is where they were located. And I gotta tell you what, I know the island of Sodor isn't really a real place, but man, I really wish I could still go there, Just go down there, just chill, spend some time talking to all the trains. Now, again, this is the child version of me. I know I'm 33 years old and I have to kind of get over it, as an adult, but come on. Anybody that watched Thomas growing up in the 90s will never get over it, okay? Like, I would never stop, reflecting back on all the episodes of Thomas and Friends. And it was really my childhood TV shows. Now, yes, I did watch Nickelodeon. I did watch Rugrats. I did watch Hey Arnold, SpongeBob, Doug, and Rocko's Modern Life, and all the live-action shows. I did see Cartoon Network with Ed, Edd and Eddy, the Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Codename Kids Next Door, Scooby-Doo, Animaniacs, and I even saw Pokemon. So, yes, I did watch all the other cartoons. As a matter of fact, Mark T. Robinson, my co-host on Two Pals on a Pod, and I talked about this, and we did an episode where we had our top 5 best cartoons of all time. He kind of took a little bit more of an advanced route when it comes to cartoons, but I took a little bit more of a traditional. I had Thomas as my number 1 cartoon of all time because, man, any opportunity I get, I wanted to watch the episodes. Like, the stories were 4 minutes long in real time, but those 4 minutes seemed like a lifetime. They seemed like, man, they just took longer than that. As a kid, you don't even understand how long something is until you grow up as an adult. But as a kid, you don't care. Like, you don't care. You just want to be in the moment. You wanted to be living time on the island of Sodor. And so, yeah, man, like, I really wanted to be a part of that in the model classics. Now, I never watched the animated CGI cartoon versions, the ones where their mouths were moving and everything. I was more of the classic model person, and I think a lot of people prefer that version nowadays. So for any kid that never saw that, you might want to watch it, and it may be a little different than what you're used to, but you know what, for me, it just meant a lot. And anytime I got an opportunity to watch a Thomas the Tank Engine episode, I was always going to take it, and sometimes I still do, even to this day. I know the show has kind of run its course, but man, I'll tell you what, I really, really enjoyed watching those TV shows, those classics. I always wanted to be hanging out with Thomas and friends. And yeah, even Shining Time Station, that was the best part about all that was, of course, the narrators. Like, you had Ringo Starr, a former Beatle, one of the Beatles, narrating the first couple of seasons. Then you had George Carlin, who ironically is known more for the 7 things you cannot say on television. I'm not going to say it, obviously, but he did an approach. Like, one thing I respect about George, he's an adult comedian. Like, he tells all the jokes with the swear words and everything. Stuff that you will never want to see your kids at. Like, it's controversial. But he took a different approach. He took the job to be the narrator because he wanted to do something to have a different side to him. And And that's what I really respect about him. Like, I would not have known that he was a comedian until years later when I see him on TV. I'm like, what? That's Mr. Conductor already? But yeah, I mean, the guy did a really great job. George Carlin did. George is my favorite narrator, and I love Ringo as well. Alec Baldwin, I mean, he was okay for the first couple of seasons, but after a while, he just started to seem disinterested. And I know Alex kind of got his own issues right now, but so that's the way I look at it. But yeah, I mean, just thinking back to all the episodes that I watched of Thomas and Friends growing up as a kid, it's my all-time favorite childhood show. And I know it sounds weird that I'm saying this now as an adult, but on the day 40 years ago where the episode premiered, it was uh, it was very, very special. And I definitely am reflecting back on this. I'm definitely going to watch some old classic Thomas episodes now that I think about it. So, yeah, you can laugh at me all you want. You can tell me that I'm silly, I'm delusional, I'm a weird kid. But hey, you know what? I think we're all kids at heart. Even if we grew up in the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, and everything, we all have a great time enjoying this. And so I just want to, tip my hat to Brett Allcroft, to Wilbert Audrey, to George, to Ringo, to everyone that contributed to bringing this great TV show to life 40 years ago, and especially to all the engines. I will never see them in real life, or unless I go to one of those adventure places, model type places, where I might see variations of them all throughout. But man, definitely am grateful to have watched that show as a kid, and it's definitely something that I will likely tell my kids one day about it, and hopefully they enjoy it as well. So, yeah, so Thomas the Tank Engine premiered 40 years ago today. I have my favorite episodes. I have some episodes that I personally dislike. I won't get much into that because, I got time is running out here. But yeah, I just wanted to come out and end this podcast with a tribute to Thomas the Tank Engine and friends. And so, anyway, I just wanted to close out my, this podcast with that. Hey, so thank you very much for listening in. Again, I apologize for not putting out a podcast last week. I'm hoping to get some out there in the future. Hopefully I can, but when you have the opportunity, subscribe to my YouTube channel, KWCLINE 91, and also to Spotify and Podbean. That's where I put out all my podcasts out there. So hopefully you guys can have an opportunity to listen in, and hey, don't be afraid to comment to me and tell me what I'm doing right, what I can improve on in these podcasts, and also what you like about them. So with that being said, thank you very much for listening in. And I normally would end the podcast with that rock version, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be playing a clip from another Thomas related, or not a clip, but another song from another Thomas related TV show. Just a little music to kind of get you remembering the memories of that show. It was from another show called Shining Time Station, which you also saw George Carlin and Ringo Starr appear as Mr. Conductor. And yeah, it was just, I definitely wanted to go to that place as well. I wish I could have. Man, I wish I was on like born during the 1980s, so I wouldn't mind having a chance to maybe have an acting gig as a child star. But yeah, so I'm gonna close my podcast out with this song, but I want you to know that I really appreciate you guys, listening in if you have the opportunity to, and I hope to see you guys next time on another episode of Crocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K Rock.